Hello and welcome. You're on Around the Wickets on ThePapare.com. Well, we're coming to you immediately after the Sri Lanka versus South Africa Test series, and I'm afraid I don't have great news. As we all know, it's been a whitewash. But the question is, I don't think many people really expected Sri Lanka to win the series. What was expected was for Sri Lanka to compete. If one expected Sri Lanka to win the Test series, well, then I think it was virtually daydreaming. You can't be beating South Africa in conditions like this unless and otherwise you've got a team with great experience and a unit that can bowl sides out. Now let's look at the Sri Lankan side. It's not one of the great sides that has left this country. It's a side with potential. It's a side that has players for the future. Now what is disappointing in this series, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm sure as far as you're concerned, is not about the results. It's about how Sri Lanka lost it and how the Sri Lankans played. Now that's the concern. Now the first Test match, I thought it was a slowish pitch. And the Sri Lankans just adapted, they just went in a tried and tested manner. I got the feeling they didn't think out of the box. Now I personally think Sri Lanka should have looked at playing two spinners during that first Test match where Sri Lanka lost by 206 runs, but the game went on for 5 days. Now, nothing wrong in trying a spinner there because Dilruwan Pereira is an experienced player. He could have partnered Rangan Herath. Then come the third Test on a seeming bouncing track where there is hardly anything for the spinners. Why did we have to include Rangan Herath? He may be a great spinner, he may be a wonderful left-arm spinner, but I'm sure he would have been the first to admit that that was not the surface for him. So maybe Sri Lanka could have looked at the fourth fast bowler. Well, those were the options that the Sri Lankans could have really taken, but then that was not the case. Unfortunately, Sri Lanka just went with a pre-arranged plan, didn't want to try kind of deviate from it, and as a result of it, I got the feeling that the results just got worse and worse as the games went on. Look at the way the games ended. The second Test by 282 runs and the third Test inside 3 days. In fact, 3.5 days by innings and 118 runs. Now that wouldn't really speak too much about the Sri Lankans. And when you look at the Sri Lankan batting record, now I'm not going to go into the Sri Lankan scores because the highest has been 281. And no one really have put their hands up. But if you look at the Sri Lankan batting averages, now I've been handed over a list. I got Angelo Matthews, Chandimal, Mendis, Dhananjay De Silva, Dimuth Karunaratne, Kaushal Silva, Taranga and Kusal Pereira. Now all of them are here. Now the best average in this has so far is 29.66 by Matthews and 29.33 by Upul Taranga, no one else. So I don't want to even dwell on those averages because things have been really bad on this tour. Just 3 half centuries, 1 to Matthews, 1 to Mendis, and 1 in the second innings for Dimuth Karunaratne, who seemed to be enjoying the second innings because I get the feeling that he seemed to be a little bit more comfortable when the pitch slows down. On a first day pitch with a little bit of juice and bounce, Karunaratne appears to be not enjoying it too much. But come the second innings, when the pitch has slowed down, well, he's a different kind of player, though he's got just 1 half century in the series. So Sri Lanka's overall batting average in the 3-match series is a woeful 18.80, which is in fact the second lowest Sri Lankan average on a tour of South Africa. Now the positive notes as far as Sri Lanka is concerned is obviously Suranga Lakmal. I thought Suranga Lakmal is fast emerging as Sri Lanka's spearhead. I liked what I saw with Suranga Lakmal, ran in hard. In fact, he showed us that in Zimbabwe. He just simply confirmed it in South Africa. Ran in hard, bowled brilliantly, lovely outswing, bowled well to the left-hander and right-hander. And then, of course, Lahiru Kumara. Still very raw, but lot of potential in Lahiru Kumara. Good thing about him is got 11 wickets in 2 games. He has pace and he's only 19 years. And at 19, he's bowling at 140 plus for a Sri Lankan. He's a strong lad and he's muscular. And as far as I'm concerned, he can only get quicker. He can only get stronger. Now, the thing is, the modern cricketer needs to be well looked after. So now, if Lahiru Kumara stays fit, injury-free, he can be Sri Lanka's next big thing. Now, the disappointing aspect was Dushmantha Chameera. Now, I'm wondering whether the selectors made the right decision. Why did he have to go to South Africa? Did he have enough cricket behind him? Did he have enough bowling behind him? Now, that's the question. And then he gets thrown straight into the first Test match on a slow pitch with very little bowling. and then he's been found wanting. Now, I wonder whether that was the right decision by the selectors, but then you can't blame them. I suppose the resources weren't great. Sri Lanka don't really have too many cricketers in a pool to call on, maybe 25, 30 the max. So the selectors had to play around with the 25 to 30 players. And also, Dhammika Prasad is not fit. So Sri Lanka needed some fast bowling resources. And Nuwan Pradeep deserves a mention. Well, he's always one of those quiet achievers, as one might call it. Never really the showman, but he does his job. So Nuwan Pradeep, Lakmal and Lahiru Kumara were the players that I thought really made an impression and were the ones that was the silver lining in a rather gloomy test series of South Africa. Now, Sri Lanka's record, incidentally, in fact, I'm talking about now the next one. I'm talking about record. It should be the T20 record because Test cricket, Sri Lanka has just won one game. That was under Tilakaratne Dilshan, haven't won anything. But in T20 cricket, which is going to be the next one, they played 6. Sri Lanka won 2. South Africa has won 4. Now, there are 3 T20 games coming up, 20th, 22nd and 25th of January. So, there are a few new faces in the Sri Lankan side. Obviously, the selectors are looking to try and bring in some young cricketers, new cricketers. This is the version that you could bring in some new players because T20 cricket is something that you can, use to try and experiment. So, Tikshila De Silva is the only uncapped player. Fast bowling all-rounder, comes from Mahinda College. And Chilau Marian, CC, he's a destructive late-order batsman and bowls medium fast, but unknown quantity. So, that could work either way. It could be a positive, it could be a negative. The South Africans have nothing to try and go back, research, no data available, no footage available. So he could be unknown quantity, he can be a surprise packet. Now in the Sri Lankan side, no Thisara Perera. Well, a T20 cricketer, I think Thisara Perera should be there. The way he can really perform if he lives up to the expectation and ability. Thisara Perera should be a permanent feature in T20 cricket. Kusal Janit, unfortunate, a very fine player, at least when it comes to the limited over version, not there. Dasun Chanaka, well, he was being thought of as someone who could play T20 cricket. Sachitra Senayaka, struggling with his action, has come back. Doesn't seem to be the same force that he was. And Milinda Sirivardhana, what's wrong with him? Where is he? I mean, I thought he's a player, a very fine left-handed all-rounder. I certainly believe he deserves a look in. And Chamara Kapugedara, well, he seemed to be struggling to find a place in the SSC side. He seemed to be struggling to find a place in his first-class side. So these are some of the names that have played T20 cricket and have missed out. Now, what would be Sri Lanka's options? Now, they have the options of opening with either Danushka or Dhananjaya, or Dikwella and Dhananjaya. So, few options available to the Sri Lankans. And well, they'll have to really be playing well because, see, what I believe is more than the defeats, sometimes defeats can cause that negative aspect. It can be contagious, it can rub off. It creates that doubt in self-confidence, which sometimes makes the players question their ability. Now, that's what the Sri Lankans need to be worried about. They need to guard against because it's not about the results. It's about how you approach. How are you mentally? Now, there are few players like Matthews, Chandimal, maybe Suranga Lakmal. They know a thing or two about approaching this. But I'm worried about the youngsters. You see the Dhananjaya De Silvas, not Dikwella, of course, Kusal Mendes, players like that who may be struggling with self-doubt for the first time after that England tour. They've been pushed onto the back foot. Their batting record being questioned. Their averages low. They're losing. So this is something that the Sri Lankan management obviously will have to work on, not just on the field, but off the field too. Now, South Africa, they have come up with a relatively unknown unit. Well, Abby de Villiers, Moni Morkel are recovering. They may be coming back, but it's a completely new unit as far as South Africa is concerned. So T20 cricket, as far as Sri Lanka is concerned, they have everything to play for. I'm not talking about winning or losing, but giving a good account of themselves. Because if they do that, I'm sure the 50-over series is going to be a much better, well-contested series. If they lose this T20 with large margins, well, the 50-over series may not look all that promising because it just starts to work on the players. It just starts. It's like some kind of a disease that spreads. So Sri Lanka will have to be very careful about it. So that's the story on Around the Wickets on ThePapare.com. We'll come back again when the T20 series is over, just to try and let you know what we think about it. And if you do agree, that's fine. If you don't, write to us and tell us your views, and we'll be glad to air it. So that's it again on Around the Wickets. Join us when we come back with our review after the T20 series.